Cool. All right. Well, we could probably get started here. We're 6 minutes past the hour. We have some pretty good number of participants. So my name is Luke, and I'm the Client Success Manager for Agritecture. And for our office hours today, we have, as you can tell, Ceres presenting. Josh is going to give us a presentation, and then we'll open up the discussion for any questions on the what you guys are working on or on what Ceres has presented. So with that, I'll let Josh dive into it.
Okay, so we have like 20 minutes, I believe. So this will be kind of the quick and dirty on what we do and why we do it, most importantly, and how hopefully it's relevant to all of you. As you can see behind me, I'm not really in a greenhouse, but for all intents and purposes, I'm in a greenhouse right now. And the reason I show this is when we say greenhouse, it's a different greenhouse than what most people think of when they think of a greenhouse. There's a big spectrum of what a greenhouse can be. And so we're going to roll through right now how we do it, how we have efficiency in mind, why it makes sense, hopefully, for producers, and where one would potentially plug this into their business model, or why they would plug this into their business model with all the other options out there. So I'll share my screen here and we'll get going. Ooh. Nope. Yes. Okay. So again, my name is Josh Holleb, and this is the best of both worlds: how hybrid greenhouses are bridging the gap in CEA. I've been with Ceres basically since its inception in 2011. We are focused on high efficiency growing techniques, ideally using the sun and a blend of glazing, which is light transmissive materials, and high insulating materials to find the correct blend for whatever it is that someone's growing. We have manufacturing in the US. We also have manufacturing in Italy for European and international markets. So we've been more and more learning how to containerize products and send them all over the world. What we'll cover: CEA. I mean, if we're here, we probably have an idea what it is. So we'll do a real brief run through of that. Greenhouse options, and then how we do a kind of a passive style greenhouse and how it's different than most greenhouses, and how we incorporate lighting, glazing, and then some controls technologies. I recently just watched this documentary. It's called Spaceship Earth, and it's about the biosphere in Arizona. That's where this picture comes from. It's kind of a really cool, a little bit odd documentary, but made me think. So I kind of encourage people to look at that. But CEA is that combination of engineering, plant science, computer-controlled technologies to optimize growing systems. And that's what we do every day. It's constantly evolving. And, we work in cannabis and we work in food production, and it's all kind of the same. They're all, they have their own timelines, but right now for food production, there's obviously traditional farming, but half of California is underwater, where probably our lettuce was coming from. And that water is now toxic with diesel and everything else. Electricity prices have gotten expensive for indoor vertical. And so, it's always like, what is the right thing? What's going to have legs and last for a long time? And that's where we spend a lot of our time thinking about. So for us, we offer two greenhouse styles: vented or sealed. And we'll just dive in real quick to what that looks like. So with a vented greenhouse, which is traditionally like what you'd be thinking of, we have controls, which is not something that all greenhouses do well, and it's hugely important. But it's an exhaust fan, it's intake louvers. We have a GAT system, which is a climate battery. It's a ground to air heat transfer, which are all these cool looking pipes down here. It's kind of a active, but not too active heat cool system. The nice things about vented greenhouses are they're cheaper to build, they're cheaper to operate, but you are somewhat at the mercy of the outdoor environment. So I saw we had St. Louis person listening and also or watching, and also New York. In a humid summer and with a vented greenhouse, you can't really control humidity because the way you cool that greenhouse is by pulling air through it. And if it's 90% humidity outside, you're not going to get lower than 90% humidity inside. So while that greenhouse might be cheaper to build and cheaper to operate, you lose the ability to have a lot of control in the greenhouse. So there's your vented greenhouse. Now, we're in Colorado. We've got a lot of clients in Arizona. We're doing a bunch of stuff in Southern California. Dry places, a vented greenhouse can be very controlled. In the winter, you close it down. It works as a sealed greenhouse. In the summer, with evaporative cooling, whether that's a high pressure fogging system or a evaporative cooling wall, wet wall, you can do a lot of climate manipulation in dry climates. Sealed is where we find ourselves going more and more. The structure is the same. The difference is that we have, as you can see here, a heat cool DHU unit that lives on the north wall of our greenhouses that ducts into the building. This greenhouse has all the same stuff. It doesn't have exhaust fans anymore, but it has glazing of the grower's choice. It has controls. We have air fans for air movement. We have supplemental lighting almost always, which you can also do at a vented. But what we can do in this greenhouse is fully control things. So as long as we know the set points that a client or a grower is looking for when we design it, we can hit set points on the worst, hottest day of the year. Worst is usually like August. Cooling is the hardest thing in the greenhouse. So now we have a fully controlled environment and full sunlight. And so this is often called hybrid because it's a sunlight driven indoor style grow, but this is where you have real control, but huge amounts of light, far beyond what you could ever do with just lighting in an indoor grow. A downside of greenhouses, and I'm going to mostly compare it to vertical in this talk because I think that's kind of where their mindset is. Like, well, if we're thinking about lettuce or something, is vertical might be the thing right now. A greenhouse, as you can see here, has a bigger footprint. We're just on one level. This is a plan view, so this is drone looking down. This is 4 greenhouses. This is 13,000 square feet of flowering space or greenhouse space. We need a bigger footprint to do the greenhouse thing than you would with a vertical grow. But what we've learned is that while some urban farms have their own distribution networks, that means you're owning vehicles. It's a whole nother level of service you're providing. Most don't, and they rely on traditional distribution. And traditional distribution is usually on the edges of the city, peri-urban. And so putting the greenhouses out on the edges of the city where the shipping centers are is often less shipping than being urban, shipping out to the city for distribution and then back into the city, which often happens. The building. Another nice thing that we do that isn't as doable in vertical is that we can stage builds or phase them. So oftentimes when someone has a concept, they want to start smaller, prove the concept, and then expand. And so what we often do is we design a phase 1 that's small. So in this greenhouse, in this drawing, there's 2 greenhouses and a small head house, but it's laid out for 4 more greenhouses. So we can keep growing in the 2 existing greenhouses without disturbing them as we expand, but we can design in the beginning for the entire thing so that as you're ready, the extra greenhouses go up quickly and easily without a lot of fuss. So there's lower CapEx to begin with. You can prove the concept. If you can prove the concept, you can maybe get money cheaper. And so we've found phasing to be really beneficial for a lot of our clients. This is like a sun slide. The sun is the driver here. Our greenhouses they orient east to west. This is a funny way to show that, but I can show it here, east to west.
Hey Josh, sorry to jump in. I think we're having issues with this slide scrolling. We're still on the topic slide, the best of both worlds.
Oh, whoa. Okay. Well, shoot. Let me I'm gonna unshare and reshare, see if that helps. Thank you. I'm just rolling along here. Are you seeing a different slide now?
Yeah, well, why greenhouses vented or sealed?
Okay, I'm gonna move it. Are you seeing this? Didn't change for you, huh?
No.
Oh, oh. Okay. Well, not totally sure what to do about that. Let's see if I do this and keep it out of presentation mode. Do you see it?
Try try changing the slide.
Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Okay.
changed.
Well, that's not ideal, but better than nothing, I guess, huh? Can you see this kind of okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sorry about that. Okay, so I'll just go back real quick. Vented, which is what I was talking about.
Hey, Josh, just quickly, if you hit the arrow on the left side, just to minimize those, sorry, a little further over. Nope, just to get rid of this screen right there. Nope,
Where?
it's right to the left of what you're sharing. The white box, there's a little,
I might.
okay.
No. Oh, this. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Hi.
Okay. Okay, so this is race through these. Sealed is what I was saying, where we add an HVAC unit, which is really the only change, and then we delete exhaust fans, ducting, lights, and then you have a indoor control environment with full sunlight. I'm just gonna confirm this is working with the slides now.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, now here's this footprint thing that I was showing you where we need slightly bigger footprint than a vertical, anything that's stacked, because we're just on one level because we're sun focused. But again, we found distribution centers on the edge of the cities. Here's our phase drawings where we've got 2 built potentially, but there's design for 4 more without disturbing the existing grow. So you can keep producing as you're producing as you decide to expand the facility. Okay, now this is the sun slide. And so this is our summer sun angle. This is an equinox, whether it's spring or fall. This is a winter's angle. Our greenhouses, and again, this is an odd orientation, but this is west over here. This is east. This is our north roof, and this is our north wall. We do a passive design. So in the winter, when the sun is low, that sun is coming right in the building. And then these north walls, insulated, actually capture that sunlight and either bounce it back, help us hold in heat. In the summer, when the sun is high, we actually cast a little bit of shade in our greenhouses on the north wall to reduce overheating. And so the sun is incredibly powerful for growing. It's more light than you could ever have in an indoor. It also produces heat, which is the hard part about using the sun, and which is why we add HVAC to a lot of our sealed facilities to counteract that. Turns out that our predominantly sealed greenhouses have a similar CapEx cost as building an indoor grow or a vertical farm, we'll say. Anything that's not glazing, so again, glazing is the clear stuff, and our insulated walls are the non-clear stuff, highly insulated. So usually our wall panels are R24 to R32. Our roof panels are R24 to R32, depending on location, what you're growing, desired set points. We offer high performance glazings. So a lot of greenhouses that you've encountered in the past are polycarbonate. That is does not allow UV to pass through it. And I'll show you a slide on that in a second, but we use acrylic, or in Germany or in Europe, it's called plexiglass, which is a UV transmissive glazing. And then we use a lot more and more of ETFE, which is a Japanese film that is incredibly durable and has full UV transmission and very high light transmission. Single layers like 94% light transmission. Double layers around 90% light transmission with full UV. So it's high performance. HVAC, as I explained, dimmable LED lighting. So what we like to say is on your worst day, we're usually a little bit better than an indoor grow. We light it up like it's an indoor grow, and then we barely use the lights, or we use them as little as possible, but they're there to set a baseline of minimum growth potential in the building. We also add high pressure fogging. Oftentimes in grow environments, we're always thinking about dehumidification, but when you put sunlight into a room, it can often get too dry, which is also a stressor. And so we use high pressure fogging. So whether we have dehue and fogging. So if it's too humid, we can dehumidify. And if it's too dry, we can fog. Fogging also allows us to run greenhouses a little bit warmer, which reduces our HVAC costs. And I can show you controls in a second. And then smart controls. So VPD is vapor pressure deficit. That's exactly what I was just saying, that we can actually run the greenhouse a little bit warmer, but at higher humidity, and the plants don't know the difference. And then we can also do DLI lighting controls, which means in a lettuce grow, if we're trying to hit 18 DLI, if we hit 18 DLI with just the sunlight, then we're just going to dim our lights really low to make sure we get our photo period of 18 hours or whatever we're going for, not to give the plants more light. They've already gotten their light amount for the day. We just need to maintain a photo period. It adds to efficiency significantly. So these are smart greenhouses, I guess, is the baseline. What we're learning in the market right now is that efficiency is super important. Operating costs are really the make or break part of any business where you're growing plants, whether it's lettuce or cannabis. Once a facility is built, one of our greenhouses, we are hands down the cheapest way to operate. Mostly it's major reduction in lighting costs, and there's also an increase in production because we have so much more light. We call it beyond indoor with the sealed facilities because we have indoor environment, but way more light than you could ever replicate in an indoor grow. And it's everywhere. So in an indoor grow, it's called point source lighting, where every light is super intense right at the light, but as you get away from the lights, there's a lot of loss of intensity. And once you get into the canopy, there's not much going on. With sunlight, you don't have that. The sunlight is everywhere and it penetrates deep into the canopy. We also have complete spectrum. I'll talk about that in a second. And so one thing that we saw that happened last year was that energy prices increased. This had to do with the war and demand for food and a lot of things. But in the US, electricity costs jumped 14%, in the EU, 22%. For a lot of indoor growers, that was like a death blow. That is a massive increase in operational costs. Our growers barely feel that increase because, again, it's a sunlight-driven growing system. And so they can still make the same amount of money per head of lettuce or per pound of whatever produce they're growing. Whereas the indoor growers either have to raise prices or cut revenue, which is usually not good for the business because growers tend to run on pretty tight margins as it is. Here's a slide I made. Now, this calls out 42 DLI. This was actually for a cannabis conference that I was doing, but the DLI doesn't matter because the ratio stays the same. The conference was in Boston, so we did a lighting study for Boston. Blue is a Ceres greenhouse, and orange is an indoor grow, a vertical grow. And it's a 3,000 square foot canopy, just apples to apples. So this could be 17 DLI, this could be 42 DLI. At this point, the cost would change, but the ratio would not change if it was a lower DLI number, which is the amount of lighting you're giving to the plants. As you can see, even in Boston in January, we are getting a third of our lighting, even on a gray day in Boston. There's a lot of diffuse light available, like from the sun. And so even on our worst days, December and January, worst months, we're already, maybe we'll call it a third or a quarter more efficient, or our bills are a third or a quarter less for lighting. And as we roll through the summer, you see we still use the lights a little bit because we're asking for a pretty high lighting load at 42 DLI, but barely. And when you look at that compared to an indoor grow, the sun, it doesn't exist in this scenario. And you can see how that in a business case can be a bit of a bummer because you're saying no thank you to this thing that is basically giving you for free what you're trying to recreate but really can't, and paying for. And so this is one greenhouse per year, and there's a $50,000 savings in this 42 DLI scenario for the greenhouse versus the indoor grow, which is a pretty compelling case. The other thing that's important, and I'll wrap up here pretty soon, is with our UV light transmission, indoor grows really don't have UV light, and you see a lot of people adding actual UV lighting into their grows. When we use a light transmissive glazing, it's also there. It's mostly UVA. It's the long end of the UV spectrum, but it has some serious benefits. Tighter plants, so same weight, but they're just more squat. They're denser. Greater leaf coloration. So in lettuce, if you're growing a red lettuce or something, the red's going to show way more. It's just going to look more beautiful on the shelf or wherever it's going on the plate. Most importantly, bugs and pathogens do not like UV. It's a natural deterrent. And so we've seen greenhouses where we've done a glazing change from a polycarbonate that doesn't allow UV through to a UV transmissive glazing, where the greenhouse basically changes in a few days. It just like powdery mildew goes away. If there was any bug pressure, they go away. It's really pretty amazing to see what UV transmission does to these plants. And then lastly, is you add smart controls. So this is where your greenhouse combines with the future. And so from your tablet or from your phone, you can not just see data, but control things. And then we can track data and then optimize over time per crop, per season, to increase efficiency over time, to make your grow more and more efficient and to make your business hopefully more and more efficient as well. That's the extent of it.
All right. Excellent. So using the what is provided to us rather than completely replacing the sun, love to see that. So everyone who attended, please feel free to reach out with questions in the chat, or if you would like, you can ask them over, turn your camera on and ask in person, either about the Ceres project or about what you're working on. So, so Josh, do you have you found any kind of restrictions on the scale of these projects? Is there any advantages towards a smaller, more concise greenhouse or a very large scale?
No. So when we do greenhouse design, so we have a few considerations. One of which is being able to not lose control of a space. So the bigger you get, the scarier it can get. There's also the bigger you get, there's an efficiency gain, but there's also a risk of losing control. And so when we go big, so right now we're working on our big is not the same as everyone else. Some big is 5 acres. Right now we're working on a 60,000 square foot greenhouse. It's like 1.5 acres, but it's broken down into 5,000 square foot houses. And so the biggest thing you have to contend with is 5,000 square feet. It's not 1.5 acres. And if you get a pest outbreak, it's everywhere. We also designed based on GACP, GMP principles, which is really like a pharmaceutical grade best practice. And so we try and create flows in the greenhouses. So people and plants, if you're going into a greenhouse, you're never going to then go into another greenhouse. You're going to go back to the main zone, change your scrubs, replace your hairnet or whatever it is, and then go to the next one. And so a lot of it is standard operating procedures, but we design the flow into the building, and then the grower provides the procedures.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. All right. So we have a couple questions here. First one is from Rohan, who's asking about information on UV transmissivity of glazing material.
So we have I can just do a real general top of my head breakdown. Polycarbonate, which is really standard 8 millimeter, which is like just over 1/4 inch, has a light transmission of 84% no UV and an R value of like 1.4. We use a 16 millimeter polycarbonate. It's a 3-layer. That's 5/8 of an inch. That is a 74% light transmission with an R value of 2.4. But what we're really trying to do is get into acrylic which has an R value of 2, but at 89% light transmission, and UV. We really are pushing the UV transmissivity. And then as we've developed a system with ETFE that no one else has, and we've been working on for a long time, and we're just implementing it and learning, but ETFE is highly durable. It's a film. It has high light transmission and UV transmission. And so I think in the future, all of our greenhouses, assuming the client can afford it, will be, all or most will be ETFE. And Luke, you're in New York, right?
I am.
So up in the Hudson Yard, is that right? It's like a new development up.
Yeah,
in
Hudson
West.
Yards, yeah.
There's an ETFE like new big building. So it's an architectural film that they use. This thing like moves, it like rolls over a park and then goes into itself. Anyways, a lot of like football, soccer stadiums use ETFE, but we're using it for agriculture purposes.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So next question from Georgia Bailey. Are your greenhouses conducive for aeroponics and hydroponics? And I might take that question a little further. Have you also done aquaponics?
Yeah, so I was actually going to say a lot of our lettuce grows are either hydroponic or aquaponic. And we work very closely with an aquaponic group. So we actually have full aquaponic layouts that are designed for our greenhouses. We have a slightly unusual footprint, and so we have a very specific aquaponic systems for it. But we also see a lot of our people who are really moving into commercial delete the fish portion and then just become hydroponic growers again, because growing fish is a whole nother level of farming. You're now a fish farmer and a lettuce farmer. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, we provide an envelope that will create whatever environment you tell us you need. And so like we do a lot of lettuce production in Canada. So like we're in Ottawa and Saskatchewan. We've got tribes in Alaska and northern British Columbia who are growing food year round in our greenhouses because they're highly insulated and still efficient. And lettuce in particular is a cold weather crop. And so we can really grow lettuce all year. The hardest part is continuing to be able to grow lettuce in the summer. That's really the hard part. But yes, it works really well for water-based growing.
Excellent. Excellent. So next question is from Sam Brown. Have you done projects that integrate solar as a source of electricity?
Yeah.
Sam's Farms in Central Virginia.
Yeah. And so what we do is we have, what we like to think of that as two pieces. The greenhouse can take, our south-facing roofs of the greenhouses themselves are glazing, and that's where sunlight comes in. So they're not conducive to putting solar panels on that because we need the light to come through. When we design a head house, we can design it to take solar, but oftentimes what we do is we design our greenhouse because that's kind of our wheelhouse. But then we know how much power it will need because we design the whole thing and we engineer all of it. We can do electrical engineering and everything. And once we have those electrical loads, we can then talk to Sam or Sam's local solar company to say, here's the offset that we need. And then Sam's local solar company can design a system in the field, because most of our guys have 8 acres, 10 acres of land, but they're not building 8 acres of greenhouses. They're building 2 acres of greenhouses and they have 6 acres kind of just hanging out. We also have just started working with I believe they're a Dutch group called EOCycle, and they're like smaller scale commercial wind turbines. And with some new grants like the REAP grant, which is like, a lot of this is from the Inflation Reduction Act. They're like $200,000 windmills, but it costs the client 30 grand, like when all is said and done. And so we're trying to find the thing. Our goal is like net zero food production. How do we do that with the ability to withstand smoke, hail, wind, flood, like in our greenhouses. And so all of that is a driver for us. So we're constantly looking for new ways to power the greenhouses.
Cool. That's super interesting. I think taking advantage of grants to support the development of these sustainable endeavors are really key, and many people don't consider it. It's something.
Yeah, and like, so for us, unfortunately, like the USDA has like some hoop house grants, and they have some cool grants for farmers, but they don't really have a greenhouse grant. And our greenhouses to build aren't cheap to build; they're cheap to operate, and there's like an insurance policy there that like we've designed it to withstand whatever weather you're going to deal with. But on the energy side, we can basically, you know, especially the windmill or some solar grants, like we could power it for very little money, which is really neat.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks like George is interested in working with you guys, which is exciting to hear.
Yeah, Georgia, our website is Ceres GS, as in Greenhouse Solutions. And so you can just send us an email, and it will come to me, or it will go to someone smarter than me that you want to talk to.
So Rohan has another question. Have you guys worked in the Indian market?
We have not worked in the Indian market. We're not necessarily relevant in the Indian market. I guess it depends where, but like India probably has a much cheaper greenhouse manufacturer for the Indian market. And we are not cheap. So we could ship a facility from Italy to India, but it probably doesn't make sense. What we do in these situations is we would potentially find an Indian greenhouse manufacturer or steel supplier and work with them to design something appropriate for the Indian market. Or maybe it doesn't make sense at all. But we're happy to do it. We do it all over. We're like in Northern South America and Central America, we're working with manufacturers there. It's a very different, you know, the sun is always at the same angle. Our whole design changes. And so we're working with a local manufacturer there to produce a product where our product doesn't make sense. They don't need, we design for wind load and snow load and all these things that they don't have to deal with.
So your designs are specific to
Location.
what?
Yeah, specific to location.
Yeah.
So latitude,
Mhm.
the roof line will change based on latitude. So when we go into far northern Canada or Alaska, we actually get into a steeper roof to be able to take winter sun better. And then when we get more equatorial, we actually totally shift our design because the sun is in a completely different place. And if we put our normal greenhouse in an equatorial place, we would basically be half shaded the whole time, which wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And then part of what we're good at and why we have a bunch of greenhouses, like up in Hudson, we have a bunch of greenhouses in upstate New York, and we do wind loads, we do snow loads, we do installation. And so whether it's cold or high wind or whatever it is, like that's kind of, if you can just build a cheaper regular greenhouse, you know, we encourage people to do that if that's what your location allows for, but a lot of places don't. And that's where we come in with this creative solution and trying to make it like really efficient.
Awesome. So Rohan, I also have a few other ideas that you could look into for greenhouses in India. So I can contact you separately and we can discuss. Oh, and yeah,
of course. I mean, we're always open. We're always open.
Excellent.
Projects in Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina. We have, okay, I gotta think of names. In Maryland, we just built a 2 greenhouse facility attached to a landfill. The landfill produces there's a power generator that then kicks heat and electricity into our greenhouses. That's very cool. Mark, who's my partner and founder, was just in Virginia, I think, visiting one of our greenhouses. We have greenhouses all over. We have a map. I used to know every greenhouse that we do, and now I don't know every greenhouse that we do because we do a lot of greenhouses.
So maybe could you explain a little bit more about how the power is generated at the landfill?
Yeah, so that technique, and like in California, with some of the cannabis growers, there's natural gas available, but not electricity. And with a landfill, there's methane. And so this is called cogeneration. And so what we can do is take gas and then run it into a generator. And while it's not 100% efficient to produce electricity, it becomes very efficient when you get electricity, heat, and CO2 out of the generator, all of which a greenhouse needs, depending on where it's located. With the heat, we can actually convert that into absorption chilling and create coolness. The CO2 we can integrate into the greenhouse, which is basically like, it just increases productivity and versatility of the plants in your greenhouse, higher CO2 levels. And so with gas, whether it's landfill methane or natural gas, we can basically create a whole power heat ecosystem with what's called cogen.
Excellent.
Also, you'll hear it called CHP, which is combined heat and power.
Excellent. I've been to a few cogeneration facilities myself. It's really excellent technology when it comes to greenhouses. Really.
Yeah, well, it's like if there's only gas, and like we have a client who it's going to cost him $2 million to bring in electricity or something, but he has a gas line, so it's like that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, a lot of our facilities that we design more and more, it's full electric. We use heat pumps. We're using the most efficient heat cool dehued technology we can find. So is cogen my ideal situation? No, I'd rather have electricity and heat pumps, and then we can offset the electricity if we want. But when we don't have that, or if we're on a landfill, we're working with a group in Appalachian, Pennsylvania, where they have gas coming out of the ground because it's an old coal mine. We'll use it. That's a waste product that we're going to turn into something positive. So we're all about being creative with the solution, but we are, my push is just like electric, because we can create renewable power, whether it is or isn't at this point, it will be in the future.
So Sam's interested about using sustainable cooling options for the summertime. Have you done any projects like that?
Yeah, so we do. We have a product called the Eco Loop, and that is a ground coupled geothermal system. And so it can be a heat or cool, but if you have consistent cool water, the way heat pumps work is they take a coolness, they bring it into the heat pump, they kind of consolidate the coolness into more coolness. It's kind of like out there a little bit, but they can take a little coolness and make more coolness, and it's really cool. So yes, if you have cold water, or we have clients who have deep wells that have cool water, we can take advantage of that to produce really affordable cooling in the greenhouses. And then Sally, your question about hiring someone to oversee daily operation. I don't know how big or what you're looking to do. If it's a small greenhouse and you want to be in it every day, you can. And, depending on size and scale, we run, we've got guys in cannabis who are at 25,000 square feet. We'll call it half acre, just over. They run a full operation with 5 people. We have lettuce automation systems that you partner with Dutch companies, and like the gutters all move around with a robot, and it really depends where you want to go with it. But it can be simple farming. We're designing a project in Montana right now that is growing in the soil, like traditional farm style, but completely sealed greenhouses. So full HVAC with ETFE glazings and full water recapture. They're in a very dry place. So all the water they put in the ground, like 90+% of it, we're going to pull back out of the air, recondition, and reuse. So, the scope is endless depending on what you're looking for. But everyone has their own needs. And so, you never know where it's going to go, but we try and help design to get you where it is that you or the client needs to go.
What was the reasoning for growing in soil? Is that just their preference, or is there?
Yeah, no, that's just he has a permaculture mindset. So that's, compost teas, manure in the ground, kind of traditional farming. They're just trying to feed it's a 9,000 acre ranch that they're trying to feed. So they're not, it's not really a commercial farm, but it's kind of a sustainable farm. And soil health is important for them. And it'll be interesting to see. It will not, you won't be cranking out lettuce like you would in a hydro system by any means. But if they wanted to convert to that, we could pour a slab, put in benching and change it. The infrastructure is there, it's just, that's a style choice at that point.
Right. Yeah.
But I love that they're doing it because now we can see, we know what our lettuce guys are doing. We know what we know what our aquaponics people are doing, and I'll be very interested to see what our soil person does. We don't have an in-ground soil production farmer in the greenhouse at this point. So that's neat.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sam, I got my master's at Cornell in controlled environment agriculture. So Neil Matson's the advisor. He's excellent. I know him very well. I'm not sure who you met who works in Richmond, Virginia, but there's a possibility I know them.
Yeah, and Glaze is a great resource.
Glaze, amazing resource as well. Another source of webinars, free webinars.
That's right. And they have a new executive director, I think, who's Gretchen.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with her a lot. She's an amazing resource for data. Also, University of Arizona has a really robust CEA program for people in the West, including the biosphere, which is very out there, but very cool if you're starting to think about controlled environment agriculture.
Indeed, yeah. And then the if you want to go international, probably the preeminent leader in controlled environment agriculture research is Wageningen University, which is a mouthful to pronounce, but in the Netherlands, they are definitely leaders in the area.
Yeah, we're doing, and there's one other, oh man, I'm gonna blank on it. They're Canadian, and it's a funny name.
University of Guelph?
Guelph.
Guelph, yeah.
I was gonna say, it kind of sounds like you're regurgitating a little bit. Guelph. They're doing a multi-year study in one of our lettuce greenhouses in Ottawa right now, which we're super excited about, because it's kind of third party study. But they're very active in North American greenhouse CEA agriculture as well. Guelph.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. So yeah, anyone have any more questions? We have about 10 minutes left. So if we have more questions, we can discuss. If you, I saw earlier, there was a comment, Prince Justin Ajinga Tanyi. If you want to speak about the Union Farms of Africa, we can discuss about what you're interested in, what type of greenhouse cultivation you're interested in, and how we can support it. Sam's asking, where does U.S. compare to other nations relative to CEA? That's an interesting question. I'd say that I'll let Josh answer, and then I'll add what
I think you'll probably have more to say. What Mark, my partner Mark, is a PhD chemical engineer from Germany, and so we're really kind of plugged into what's been happening in Europe for a long time. And Europe, I mean, they produce so much greenhouse produced produce, whether it's in the Netherlands or in Spain, and they're quite different ways of growing, but they're doing it. Morocco's starting to turn on pretty big. And it's really more like low tech, weather, somewhat controlled. Anything inside could be CEA. But what we learned, like, we're in Colorado. Europe is pretty mild. It's never that cold. It's never that hot. Well, it's changing a little bit, and it's never that sunny there. And so when a lot of people, like, our traditional greenhouse in the US now is still a European style design. And there's some amazing things to it. They're really good at roof venting. Venlo is like a cool style where you can get a lot of heat out of a building. But But like in Colorado, that building overheats in the summer, it freezes in the winter, it's crazy expensive to heat. And it's just not used to like the intensity of sunlight that we get in the Western US. And so I think there's a lot to learn from international CEA markets, but we're also like, we consult with a lot of people in the Middle East now, where it's like 120 degrees and just sunny, and they have minimal water, and they're like, what do we do? You know, and like Europe can't really help with that, or that's not where their mindset has been. And so we're newer, you know, we're 12 years old doing this series, but like, so we're coming at it from a whole another place. And so we're young up and comers, but I feel like the US is, and especially because cannabis legalized here first, we're kind of pushing some things that other people haven't done thus far.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd add that Canada has I would say in some ways is farther advanced than the US in CEA. And a lot of that could be chalked up to the fact that they need to do it more than we do. We have the US is blessed with huge quantities of very fertile land. California is an absolute agricultural powerhouse, which means reduces the necessity to invest that in CEA. But as we see changes occurring in a variety of both climate and political arenas, that there is a shift in there. Also, yeah, Mexico has a significant amount of greenhouses, but they tend to be quite a bit low tech and closer to the hoop house modified.
Well, and predominantly shade structures in Mexico. It's you know, what's interesting about Canada is like Leamington is their main greenhouse place, and it's kind of in like their most southern spot in Canada, and it's like north of New York. You know, it's like that's their southern place, so they need structures and they produce peppers and tomatoes and all those things, but they wouldn't be able to do it without an indoor space, where we really have the ability to do it outside. Yeah. But that being said, they buy our greenhouses because this has to evolve. And those are legacy greenhouses. And when they were built, power was cheap. And so, you know, people are holding on and they make it work, but it's not easy. And so, you know, we don't know what the answer is, but like, there's a lot of work to do to figure this out. And again, like what we're seeing in California is like food close to home, food grown close to home is important. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it tastes better.
Yeah, Sam, I think that there's a pretty big push for indoor and even vertical farming in Virginia, right? There's I've heard of a bunch of different companies, with obviously the AeroFarms Danville site, and then you have Babylon Microfarms based out of Virginia, and there's another vertical farm I've heard about, Farm to Market, I think it's called, that been
something interesting, and Luke, maybe you have thoughts on this, that we talk about but haven't dove into yet, is nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
We are a full sunlight controlled room. And so the question that we ask is like, does that produce a more nutrient dense, whatever, tomato, lettuce, than an indoor LED farm or something? It's not part of the conversation right now. Lettuce is just lettuce. And so we have not gone there because we haven't had the time. But it's always something that we're asking, and we would like to show or like to know, but it's kind of an unknown. I think. Is it an unknown?
With the nutrition, I think nutrition is like a whole different topic. I mean, when you talk about food, to scope from like production all the way into the nutrition in your body is like, you need like, I don't know, 3 to 6 PhDs to really understand each step. But nutrition, there is still different schools of thought. I'm not a personal expert. but I do know, I have seen reports that the CO2 enrichment actually has a significant impact on nutrition.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
Natural sunlight can also, different spectrums of light. So there is, and then also the whole shelf life as the nutrition degrades. It's a very complex topic. So yeah, and then Sally. So it looks like Sally's also interested in speaking to you, Josh, about her specific project.
Yeah, so and we do, we don't automatically assume that you need, Sally, that you would need a sealed greenhouse or not. We actually would look at the conditions of the exact site where you are. There's weather stations all over the country, so we can get really good data. We can find out what you're growing and when. Are you going to adjust seasonally or not? And then we can start to discuss what an appropriate solution for that would be. We work with a lot of nonprofits. We work with a lot of Native tribes and First Nations tribes in Canada. We do a lot of school projects, and so we're a business, and so we have 25 people and we need to make a little bit of money, but we are not money driven. We're really values driven, and really we want to figure out how to grow food well for people. And so we love really creating community spaces. I mean, we see when we're in our educational greenhouses or greenhouses that give tours, it is like the best feeling to watch like fourth grade students having a class in the greenhouse working plants. It's really, really cool. And so we love helping people figure that out.
Matteo, you raising your hand. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
I put my email address in the chat, I think.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah,
if any-
so Josh put his email address in the chat. You can contact me if you have any questions at luke@agritecture.com. If we, Justin, I can follow up with you about the educational opportunity separately. I think we can definitely, that is something we're working with a few other educational institutions about, so we can absolutely look into that. So it sounds like we're just about at the top of the hour here with 2 minutes. So unless anyone else has anything to add, I think we can wrap this up. There's Josh's email once again.
Yeah, and we have on our website, which I'll also type in, we have a lot of information on our website. If anyone's just curious about anything, we have a whole blog section, and we actually have two oh, you're not seeing my email address? Oh, to host and panelists. Oh, hold on. Let's try that again. To everyone. Okay. Here we go. Sorry about that. How's that? And we have two websites. We have Ceres GS. We also have Ceres Can, which is a cannabis specific website. So my guess here is that most people want to see the Ceres GS website. They're similar, but a little bit different. But there's a lot of information there, and feel free to reach out either to me or through the website. We're a small company. It will either get back to me or get to the right person.
Excellent. All right, Josh, thanks for presenting and joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Sorry about the weird slide situation, but hopefully that worked out okay.
No, no problem. I think it was just fine. So yeah, feel free to follow up with either or both of us. It sounds like, Josh, you have a few maybe potential leads coming here, which is great. And we will, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you, Luke.